Setsi, for Esther's organization, for Shopezo, we must speak collectively to overcome the barrier. So yes, the barriers exist, but quickly, let's pivot into how do we bring them down? Thank you.
Ashe, Ashe, I appreciate the fire, the energy, the actual insights, the wisdom, and just the sheer love of your intellectual property and social location, lived experience that you're willing to share with us. Thank you, Juliet. We appreciate you. There's a proverb that we say in Ghana, and it's an Akan proverb. It's "Wo nsa damua," and it means if your hand is in the dish. My next quote, my next question is for Chope. So right now, our remarkable colleagues at ESDC, through the Investment Readiness Program and through CMC, are building out frameworks and models to support co-ops. Do we have the ability right now to build out the Black co-op ecosystem? I think of a documentary I watched a few days ago. I'm not going to name the community, but a specific community has a very strong lobby. And one of their lobbyists made a statement to an individual, and he said, within 24 hours, I can have all the senators' signatures in this caucus on this napkin. And that's the power sometimes of a lobby. And because remember, they're afraid of those 1,000 phone calls, those 1,000 emails that one day. So I'm saying all to say that if the co-op ecosystem as a whole in Canada is already being neglected, and in some instances even being disrespected in the federal budgets, how does a niche group that shouldn't be niche because we created cooperative economics really stand out and have impact? So once again, Chope, my question is very straightforward. In terms of the work that CMC is doing around the IRP, what are the opportunities and emerging trends, and what is the work that you're doing that you'd like to amplify in this session right now?
Well, that is a very challenging question that you present, certainly. Because as you mentioned, that the cooperative sector as a whole is even neglected when it comes to like the federal budget. There was a time when with a previous government where the cooperative sector had a whole entire agenda within the government, and government changed and we got lost during that process. And so the cooperative sector as a whole needs to collectively work together to be able to put forward our agenda and make sure that it's on the radar of the government. And certainly we are doing that through initiatives through ESDC and also innovation, and Innovation Science and Economic Development Canada as well as some other federal government initiatives. As people of color, especially as Black people, you're right, within the co-op. So within the cooperative sector, that's already neglected by the government. We, as the Black people, are even more neglected within the cooperative system. So it does present challenges. I want to say that within the work that I am doing, some of the ways that we're trying to at least elevate the voices of Black people and Indigenous people and other underrepresented groups is by ensuring that we are in the rooms for those conversations, meeting regularly with ESDC. One of the initiatives that I'm currently doing is that I am undertaking some landscape reports to kind of find out the lay of the land in terms of where are our Black cooperatives in Canada, where are Indigenous cooperatives in Canada, where are the cooperatives that are predominantly serving women, gathering that information and saying that, look, there is a robust group of people that are already organized and are doing this work that the government is not aware of. And I want to take that information and present to them and say, here they are, here are where these people are located, and put some resources into them. It's not that these groups do not exist. It's simply just as I believe Juliet mentioned, that you aren't reaching them the same way that in the way that they need to be reached. The outreach is not being done in a way that is meaningful to those communities. So that is some of the work that I'm doing, just trying to get a landscape, a lay of the land of these of underrepresented groups, especially Black, Indigenous, people of color groups within the cooperative sector. So yeah, there's lobbying that we are doing for sure within government. So as I mentioned with ESDC, and I SED, and consistently looking forward to opportunities to put myself in rooms and to help other people to enter rooms so that the government can see that we are a resilient group of people and that we are organized and that we are ready to take on more investment. I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Yeah, it does, and I'm not going to pronounce your colleague at CMC's name correctly, but you know who I'm talking about.
Kiswahili.
Kiswahili. There's nothing that brings me more joy than sitting at tables now and seeing the two of you at the table. When I was fighting to get it used to be Setsi and maybe a couple of our staff at the table as the only Black faces at some of these tables, and seeing y'all there really inspires me. And we definitely need to onboard more of our people around the pre-budget submission process, around effectively lobbying, not just within the co-op ecosystem and not just with federal governments, but also within community, and create that baseline of knowledge and understanding. I saw Ryan in the chat send me a message around the Black Entrepreneurship Study Group that he has every week under, and the fact that there was there was a Black co-op ecosystem, a Black co-op study group that was being formed, but once again, attendance was waning. So Ryan, we can get to the Q&A in a second, but great question, great points. My next question is, and thank you so much, Shope, for your leadership. We appreciate you. And folks, any messages, please send to everyone. Direct messages are hard for me to navigate. Esther, my question to you is, in terms of what you heard so far, I remember you had your AGM in Durham recently, and you've existed for 23 years. You had city councilors, MPs, MPPs there, and still, after all that time, you still don't receive the level of resourcing that many, you even had the mayor of Durham was there, and you still don't receive the resourcing that you, I feel you deserve based off developing 7 Black women co-ops over the past 3 years. Do you feel this is a sign of anti-Black racism? Do you feel this is just a structural issue? Or do you feel that it's a capacity or bandwidth issue?
Wow. It's a combination of everything you have named or said. Well, you know what? We face challenges. For being a Black woman, we face not only gender inequality, we face racial inequality, and we face different kinds of inequality, but you need to believe in yourself. It is only you that can tell people whom you are. We should not allow people to define us, to tell you whom you should be. Yes, what you said is true. I don't know what to call it. It could be anti-Black racism. It could be racism based on my social location or based on WMRCC due to the clientele our organization serves. But that doesn't prevent the organization from doing what we are up to do. When we created the organization with a vision. This is whom we are. This is the direction we have to go. And we have remained focused on that direction. We experience systemic issues, systemic racism, anti-Black racism. Sometimes I added anti-African racism too. So because people focus on who is there, as opposed to focusing on the good work you are doing, the organization is doing. But in any way, this is how the society is built. We can only contribute by educating people to unpack what they've learned or what they think certain individuals should be. And also not to judge people based on where you come from or your culture, your language, your skin color. But it is only us who can prove to people, this is who I am. You might think I am this person or I don't have the capacity to run an organization or to bring the organization to this point, this level, but we just need to prove ourselves and do what we are set to do. That has been my goal all these years, and that has been what the organization has been focusing on for years. And our organization deals with issues of gender-based violence and issues of diversity, equity, inclusion, access, human rights, and social justice. We focus in this area, and we haven't divided all these years. We continue to work and focus on this, making sure that the women, youth, and children who come to us receive equitable and effective services to help them to integrate and adjust to life after experiencing violence, and also to support these women entrepreneurs and cooperative groups that we are developing to help them to find resources that can further help them to develop their businesses. So we are focusing on the great work the organization is doing, rather than to be saying, oh, the system think I'm this low, so I will go with them because they feel I'm this low. You have to walk past, you have to prove yourself to people. You have to exercise determination, resilience. That is what is keeping us going. And you need to know who is your supporter and embrace that person who is supporting you, and who is not supporting you. You have to leave that person behind. So since we started this cooperative group, when we started this journey with developing cooperative group, it was lonely because we didn't know any other groups, any Black. I didn't know about you, Victor. I remember meeting you at one of the conferences in London, Ontario, or elsewhere, and Janet Cox Bennett, one of the leaders of the cooperative, introduced me to you. I didn't know about Freedom Dream. I didn't know about Juliet is from my culture. We speak the same language. We are from the same clan, but I didn't know what she was doing. It was Christine who sent email introducing Obi. Obi Agusiebu. I met Obi. We have mutual friend. And I was hearing Obi. I never know. It is today that I saw her face. I say, oh, Lika, this is the Obi that I know. You know, that kind of thing. So I thank Dr. Caroline Hussein because she has amplified the work. Lately, I've been receiving all these speaking engagements here and there, because of this. But before, nobody was inviting me. So being involved with this cooperative, with you, Victor, with Dr. Caroline Hussein, it has amplified the work for us. Oh, people say, oh, so they have some skill, they have something to offer. But without that, so we should not look at ourselves so little. We have to know ourselves, build the confidence in ourselves, know our work, know what we are capable, the knowledge we have, but the opportunity is not given to us. But we should not relax and say the opportunity is not given to me, so I should sleep. We need to use our power, whatever we have, and use it to escalate, use it to build ourselves up, use it to let people know, this is my knowledge, this is what I know, this is what I'm capable of doing. So that's what I'm always advising to people. We have a lot of talents, we have a lot of skills. And another thing is that we tend to work in silos. So it doesn't help us. Once we start working more collectively, just like we started to build ourselves through all these meetings we are having, social network, you will see things will improve a lot for us. And you mentioned about funding. Funding is what, okay. I don't know whether to say whether it is good or bad. Something changed in 2020 due to the murder of George Floyd. Everybody started moving, wanting to support Black communities. The federal government started throwing money for Black this, Black that. So we want to see something that is sustainable. So after this, what happens? That is my scared. We want something sustainable to carry us through, because most of the times our communities start business because they got money, then 2 years, that money finishes. And what happens? They will not be able to access another fund to continue. Then the business closes. We want something that is sustainable so that we will continue. I know WMRCC a few years ago, the same thing happened to us, but we refused to close down. I went one good year with no salary. I lost all my staff members. Then I said, this organization like this that has been in the community for 20 years. So because of no grant, we will close, and we have all these clients, we have all these great programs we have developed. I said, you know what? I recruited volunteers and students. We continue to deliver the program until we were able to bring in new funds to hire staff members. So we have to learn how to, in every condition, how to pivot to sustain us. So that's the only thing I will say. Thank you. And you mentioned that, yes, when we do events, a lot of MPPs come, a lot of MPs come, a lot of mayors, regional councillors, politicians, they are always there. But you know what? I will put my need on the table, but I'm not gonna chase anybody. So that's the way I operate. I will put my need on the table and present it. So it is up to you if you want to support. But if you don't want to support, that's okay. I will try to manage and see how to handle things to make it work for me. So.
Ashe, I give thanks. And I'm a big believer in representation for taxation and making demands as opposed to requests, because power concedes to nothing, never has, never will. And as your brother, I'm here for you, as you know, many times over, and you deserve all that you need in terms of resources to continue the remarkable work that you're doing. And we give thanks for your leadership and all those insights. I'm gonna go to you, Obi, right now. We're gonna shift gears a bit because of time. In terms of models internationally or nationally that inspire you most, what are some of the models in the cooperative ecosystem that are inspiring you most right now that you're seeing?
The multi-stakeholder. So looking at the multi-stakeholder type of co-op systems, right? And where multiple people can work together, right? And help and sustain themselves. It's something that I think will and can be sustainable, right? That because I know in terms of cooperatives, how you want it, it comes to the community to meet a need, right? The whole idea of a co-op is to meet a need within the community, right? And the need could be, it falls under, so from my own, using my own terms, the social determinant of health, right? It could be the education, it could be health, it could be the environment, but it's a need within the community that the co-op is trying to address. And when they do that, you have to look at it through an ecosystem lens, right? It can't be just one thing. Otherwise, you're going to see things dropping by the wayside. So take, for example, you're looking at, say, okay, what we're doing in terms of jobs. How do you provide jobs, right? Now, within the job ecosystem, right? And for me, I'm a big believer. I understand the need to create your own, co-op. Sorry, I understand the need to create your own entity, right? For it, okay, where I'm coming with that is a cultural background, right? We're Africans, or I'm African, or we have a Setsi, right? Now, a Setsi is meeting the financial needs, right? and in terms of community as a whole, right? You're coming with that lens, and with that lens, right, there are multiple parts of it. So the ability to cover, to meet those parts, so down to job, looking at jobs. So what I'm trying to say is, when you come to Canada and you're trying to address the issue of jobs, you have to acknowledge the fact that there are different aspects to job. So you have the apprenticeship programs, right? And you have the professional program, right? And then you have what the government you have the skilled trades, and government has entities around that. So it's like, how do you work with all these parts, understanding that we have issues in terms of getting jobs, right? We go into a job, so we may get or may not get a job. Opportunities are not available to us, right? How do we create those opportunities? Using the system, right? And that's where that multi-stakeholder. So you have getting the jobs, you have the training side of it, who's going to provide the training to the youths. You have the reporting side of it, you have the research. So all these different entities coming together from that job aspect. So that's why the multi-stakeholder, right, is looking, it's where I think I tend towards, because within that multi-stakeholder, you can have the worker co-op as well, right? You can have, looking at the worker entity part of where you have people working, say, for instance, you create a food hub, right? You can have workers working within the food hub, right? Which does your employ people to work there. So they're just different parts of the multi-stakeholder cooperative that I really find very fascinating, and which makes sense to me in terms of my background, my field, because of that ecosystem building type thing, and able to do the added value systems you can put to the core. So that's what I see as a very viable and sustainable type thing. And in the end, when you're looking at from 3 years from now, 4 years from now, you're able to design something where you can now say, okay, the people that have been helped, can they now put money towards helping other people participate in that system as well, and bring in the youths? How do you get them to become, from being apprentices or being, to become entrepreneurs as well, so that they can also bring in people, right? So that whole ecosystem building, that whole, and then also having, so like I said, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, right? The whole metric system, right? How you are having, like, how you can now, in terms of numbers, okay, so how many people pass through the system? How many people, how many trainers are you developing? How many entrepreneurs are you, creating, from that whole system? And in the end, I think it's going to be a very sustainable model in trying to help us get to where we need to be in being sustainable, being able to stand on our own, so that when funding does stop coming in, we're able to take care of ourselves, because we've built people that have the means to take care of other people as they come in.
Thank you so much, Obi. Appreciate your leadership as always. I'm going to shift to Christine. In terms of inspiring models of co-ops across the country and internationally, what are some of the most inspiring models that are really intriguing you right now?
Thanks, Victor. So I'm going to start with this model right here. You talked about how do we build the Black co-op ecosystem? You just heard Juliet and Esther just talking about it in these really inspiring terms. Among our organizations, we're taught. Esther and I had a conversation yesterday. Juliet and I had breakfast in Vancouver last week. And the way we talk to each other, it's always that concept of solidarity. We're not, as you said, we can't silo. We're not trying to silo. We're always thinking about, how can we co-apply for opportunities? How can we connect the strengths of BWP the strengths of Freedom Dreams, the strengths of WMRCC. How do we actually connect that to build this strong coalition? And it's a spirit of true cooperation. It's a spirit of abundance and not competition or scarcity. None of us talk to each other like, okay, we got to keep things from each other because we're going after the same grant, you know, which is what you see in these nonprofit sectors. You know, we're building it right now, that Black co-op ecosystem. We have these, we don't have these conversations once a year when the conference cycle. We're constantly in communication and building those links. What we do need is the profile, right? Because yes, when I first came into the co-op sector and I Googled co-op sector in Canada, same thing as Esther just mentioned. I didn't see Setsi, I didn't see WPW, I didn't see WMRCC. I just saw these associations and federations with these you know, white staff. And I was like, oh, this is what this is the co-op sector. But everyone here in this panel, no, this is the sector, right? These organizations. And so this is the model I find inspiring. And the other thing I want to say to answer that question, Victor, and also going back to your question about building the co-op ecosystem, I want to say we have to not call it the Black co-op ecosystem, because we have to call this the Black solidarity economy ecosystem, because you heard Chope and yourself, Victor, you reflected that the co-op sector, it's not on the federal agenda. It's sort of this niche, you know, in and of itself. And you heard Juliet talk about, you know, a systemic barrier is that the co-op sector actually doesn't really recognize the ways in which our communities cooperate, right? The co-op sector recognizes incorporated co-ops. And Dr. Carolyn Shanaz-Hossein wrote quite a bit about that, you know, and naming it as racism. The fact that Roscas, you know, aren't getting the recognition or the resource because they're not seen as co-ops. Or if you look at all of the mutual aid initiatives that, you know, had been happening, but only kind of got the mainstream spotlight during lockdown, that were led by Black women, you know, by members of the 2S LGBTQ plus community, right? So these weren't getting recognized. They're now starting to get recognition because of the advocacy of BWPW, because of Dr. Carolyn Shanaz-Hossein. Now you're seeing some of the provincial and national co-op associations start to recognize them. But that said, if we want to really expand this ecosystem, if we want to, Victor, if we want to get the numbers you got from your other panels into this panel, we need to start talking in the way of being the Black solidarity economy ecosystem, because co-ops are an important part of that. They are a part of that system. And so we need to start getting other, you know, folks in this space, you know, who are doing Black entrepreneurship, who are, you know, convening around social finance to see themselves as part of what we're doing. And we need to see ourselves as part of what they're doing. There's so many great Black led entrepreneurship programs, incubators. I would love to see that they involve us in the conversation for a co-op option, so that when they're doing that work in community and talking to Black entrepreneurs, that there is, you know, that we're also in that space. So if a Black entrepreneur goes, you know what, I have this business idea, and I think I could really realize that as a co-op, that, you know, those resources are there. So I also want, what's inspiring me is this model that I'm kind of freedom dreaming about, is that, you know, in Canada, you know, the tribe networks are, you know, any of these, you know, entrepreneurs, they're doing this great work, that they reach out to BWPW, to Freedom Dreams, and say, hey, can you, you know, do a co-op module so that we can, you know, present that option as well to our entrepreneurs. So that's how I see, that's how I see us building up this ecosystem. Let's not silo ourselves in the same way that the co-op sector has. Let's call ourselves the Black solidarity economy ecosystem, and validate and uplift all of the ways, formal, informal, that we're doing cooperation. Let's plug ourselves into, you know, the Black entrepreneurship ecosystem already happening, and let's just collectively build this.
Ashe, my sister. And I sit on the board of Tribe Network, and my brother Alfred is moderating a panel in 3 hours. So that's something that's very doable. So let's get it done. I see Obi has her hand up. Go ahead, Obi.
Yeah, and yeah, I just want to add, in line with what Christina said, right? The Black, like we as Black people were already marginalized, right? And if we do not come together as a group and we stop playing the co-op sector, the Black co-op sector, the communities, you know, the people working in the community, because the Black co-op sector and people working in the community are doing the same thing. They're one and the same. So until, like Christian said, we change that language, like the co-op sector different from, you know, until we bring the community leaders, like the people working in the community that are not called co-ops, introduce them to the co-ops, to the way the co-op is. Like from me, I've never really looked at myself as a co-op. I work in the community. I've always worked, 20 years I've been working in the community. And I've been working as a cooperative, right? Like cooperatively, right? But then when you throw in the co-op sector, it's almost like, no, are you a co-op? Are you a cooperative? You know, so we are already marginalized. So we shouldn't marginalize ourselves even further we should find a way to bring the community leaders into the co-op sector, teach them, introduce them about it so that we can come in with the same language, right? The same language. And when we come in the same language, you're going to be stronger. And we're going to have more success stories to put forward. You know, we're going to have more impact, make more impact. And our voices will be louder when we bring this lived experiences together. See? So with what we're looking to the BWP, to bring all of us together, all the Black women together, right? Working in different sectors, in the community, with all the wonderful things that each of us are bringing. Bring us under one umbrella, right? As a co-op. So imagine how powerful that is, right? Because nobody will come out and say, you're not doing, you have not done. Because just bringing one organization under BWP alone will quench anything. Will say, no, you cannot say these people are not doing anything. You cannot say that the Black people are not anywhere or have not earned or are not, you know, like how Julia told me something, where equity, what did you call it? Equity denial. What's the equity denial group? So where equity denial.
Right now.
Yeah, so, you know, so I think so we should look at bringing ourselves together. Community leaders, co-op. Co-op, teach community leaders how to become co-ops, you know, and get stronger. You know, that's the way I visualize this thing. That's my own freedom dreams.
Ashe, thank you so much. Julie has her hand up, and then we're going to go to questions and answers so we can seal up. I really appreciate your leadership. Go ahead, Juliet.
Thank you so much. So I wanted to speak to, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So I wanted to speak to this, you know, what's happening, whether internationally or locally, like what co-ops can we look to in terms of those that are, you know, exemplary that we can draw from. And I want to start within Canada because often, even amongst us, there's also the danger of excluding other groups. So I'm going to speak specifically about two co-ops. One is La Termitière, the other is based in a different province, but we're in a program together with them at the Co-op Academy with the Canadian Worker Co-op Federation. And the reason why I mention them is because they are Francophone cooperatives. So what we've discovered is that a lot of times, even amongst us as Black people, right, we forget that the history of colonization has divided us even into more fragments, right? And a lot of times the Anglophone and the Francophone entities are not speaking together. So when we come into spaces like this, it's also very important for us to remember those that are not in the room so that in future we bring them in. One of the great joys for us as BWPW is that we were able to partner with La Termitière on a grant application, right? And we only just met them in the summer. Christine was there, and that was again at the ACE Institute that the Worker Co-op Federation had sponsored us to. So amongst ourselves, being aware of this history of the slavery, transatlantic slavery, colonialization, capitalist model, what it has done to us as Black people, the different fractures that it has created in us, and how we can proactively begin to heal that. That's one. La Termitière has been very successful in putting forward the ROSCA model, just as we have been advocating for it. When we apply for grant, we state it there, because what was happening before is when you talk about a SUSU, ROSCA, because the people that you're applying for grants don't understand the model, it's dismissed, right? But we insisted that we're going to keep putting it in. And then what started happening was that, you would have maybe like a funder like the Cooperatives say, oh, let this consultant interface with you. They understand that model and they can ask you questions around it. And so with that, you're inching your way, opening up. So La Termitière, for instance, have been able to put that forward to the level that even FISRA now says, okay, there's a way this can exist within the cooperative sector. The work that Caroline Shenaz Hussein, I keep bringing that up because it is so critical, of people saying we must validate the informal sector. The women, men, racialized groups that operate in this alternative economy, and which Christine broadly mentioned, the solidarity economy, right? We must give validation to their work. It should not be looked at through the prism of capitalism, of the formal sector alone. Both can exist equally, right? So that work is very important. Esther and myself are part of the Banker Ladies Council, and we're working, and Dr. Hussein is leading that, where we want to create a federation, a ROSCA federation that is not just legitimacy, because we are already legitimate, but it is amplifying it, creating the structures, the institution, to be able to speak to policy, to speak to the federal government, to speak to institutions, to speak to donors, to say this exists. These are the challenges. This is how we mitigate risk. This is how this can do so much more. And with organizations like MIQ, we see where this can lead. We're already working with MIQ. We know, for instance, that now people can build their credit using ROSCA. We didn't have that before. We know that people can pool funds collectively and fund businesses. We're doing that for one of our members, where she had applied for funding for different organizations, didn't get it, and we reverted back to community to say, wait a minute, where are the people in our community that have funds that can support our own? Why are we not making a data list, for instance, of those that are accredited investors, of those that are interested in communal investing? We went back to our system. Shokwe might be familiar with this, and Obi. While I was doing my MBA in the UK, they were talking about this alternative system. And at a point, I was like, wait a minute, we've always done this. I'm part of the southeastern part of Nigeria. There's a system called Imwa here. What it is that you take someone in your community and you teach them, whether it's a trade, whether it's a skill, and then you fund, the community funds that person to stand. So pooling of resources, you're not competing with the person. In fact, your measure of success is that the person does better than you. That system, we've practiced it for centuries, but it wasn't until a friend of mine, Robert Newell, he's American, he went on TED Talk and talked about it, the power of the informal economy. You can look it up on YouTube. And then it was like Harvard, Business Review is now doing articles on it. And another important part of that is that a Nigerian professor said, no, this is our story. No one is going to co-opt it. We're going to show you people all the work that has been done around it. That's another model. Then you look to India again. And you see so many examples. I'm going to just mention two. Shetna Sinla. This is the woman that rural women were not able to get access to capital because they were, illiterate. They deemed them as illiterate. They didn't have the capacity and all of that. And she brought them together and said, we're going to create our own bank. Now that bank has their capitalization over 20 million, 100,000 plus members. They are the ones that own the institution. They give loans to themselves. Some of the women can't write, and they said, we're going to use thumbprints for it. We as Black people have to start thinking that way. When the door is shut against us, how do we create our own systems so that that system is strong enough to coexist side by side with what is? And then we can have the conversations, because how we frame this is very important. When we speak to the federal government, when we speak to the institution, we're not asking for handouts. We're saying if you want to address poverty, Black women, racialized women are the future. If you want to increase the GDP, we are the future. If you want to expand the cooperative sector, the solidarity economy, we are the future. You need us in this space. You need to fund us so that health, education, food security, sovereignty, access to affordable housing, these things can be addressed. So we're not asking for handouts. We're saying models exist. We're building it ourselves. Come fund us. Let's be an equitable, just society. In Spain, Basque region, Mondragon is showing that it is possible. If it's possible for them, it is possible for us. We have to get out of this space. Yes, the marginalization exists. Racism exists. All of that exists. There's room to protest on the street, but there's also room to be strategic, to be intentional, to look at the strengths that we have as a people and then come with it. And I'm going to end on this note. November 18th, 1929, 55 women were killed in Nigeria because they protested against colonialism, against double taxation, against the capitalist model that was crippling them. But in that protest, that uprising, they got their rights. And I'm saying that too many people have already died, from George Floyd to so many that we're aware of. Let's move beyond this to reclaim our right. The Black solidarity economy is something that we should be talking more of. Freedom Dreams, create content. Let's co-create curriculum that will take into our schools, build a pipeline of young people, teach them ROSCA, teach them cooperation. It's what we've always done, but let's bring it to this economy and then we can do great things. Enough of the marginalization or no, let's go in collectively and be the people that we can be. Thank you.
Ashe. Thank you, my sister, for your leadership and fire and passion and all your insights. You have no idea how much we appreciate you and all that you do for so many. So we're closing out, but we have one question from our sister Louise. Louise, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. One question, sign me up. Where can I sign up? One of the things I'm not sure of is how developed the ROSCA or Isuzu model is out east here. I'm in Nova Scotia. I can tell you, I come from Kenya. I can tell you pretty much all the immigrant women I know probably are some sort of group, but the structural development or tapping into the organizations that exist in the way that you have named them, and frankly, even some of you here in this meeting, I had never heard of before today. So that is essentially my question to your point, Juliet, that you've made. What is an avenue by which either individuals like me or me and all the SUSUs I'm part of, I can say, hey, let's go be part of this Freedom Dreams and this federation, even as we do what we do in small ways here in our community. Thanks.
That's easy. All our sisters can put their emails in the chat right now so that y'all can connect as well. Louise, you're the co-chair of the Solidarity Working Group, so I can do an email introduction between you and all of these sisters because I know them very, very, very well. but I want to make sure I open up the floor if any of y'all wanted to answer Louise's question.
So thanks a lot, Louise. Victor, I think you framed that properly. Our contact information, Victor will do that follow-up because we all need to get together. For the ROSCA, we'll have a conversation around that because it's a long conversation, but MIQ, that's another institution, organization that's run by two young, like just dynamic young people that they blow my mind. They've created a digitized platform where we can do ROSCA with ease. And I'll be more than happy to have that conversation with you because our next iteration, we're going around in community, telling people this is happening, let's show you how to do it. And then, of course, the federation that Dr. Hussein, Esther, and a couple of other Isusu practitioners are working on, it's still in development, but we can have that conversation. Lots happening and yes, really excited. Thank you.
Thank you. Just something else I wanted to capture for the recording and you brought to my mind is as an opportunity is we're going to host an in-person Atlantic Black Policy Conference in Prince Edward Island. We did it in 2020 virtually, but it's going to be in person April, the weekend of the 28th. I'm on the organizing committee for that. I actually want to talk to them because what I'm not sure that we have is a piece around the economic and empowerment piece. It would be amazing to have a speaker in that conference to reach out to the multiple members of the Black community in Latin Canada that are going to be present to talk about this there. So thank you.
And funny enough, our brother Jonah from MIC or MIQ, I'm actually doing a capacity building session for him and his team next week, Sunday. But he's actually from Prince Edward Island originally. So he's from Atlantic Canada, and Jonah's doing some remarkable work. Thank you, Louise, for your leadership and love as always. And thank you, Juliet, for those responses. And thank you all for putting your emails in the chat. Our last question will be from our brother Andre. Good to see you, my friend.
Yes, hello everyone. Yeah, amazing panel. I was gonna ask you a question, and I have to also note that so many wonderful ideas have been shared, from the multi-stakeholder cooperative model to the Black solidarity economy to Juliet, all the things you said, amazing. Thank you so much. I guess maybe as a final question, I was just thinking, like, just to kind of bring it all home from just a lot of things that we can do. What is the most important thing that we can do to shift the co-op system within Canada? If there was like one thing that each of the speakers could just leave us with, it could be big, it could be small, but just if you had to choose one, maybe what would be one of the most important things you could see happening in the co-op system in Canada to shift right now?
Thank you. It's a great question. I'll open up the floor. Just please come off mute, my sisters. What's one thing that you would shift, if possible, to change the co-op ecosystem in Canada?
Hi, everyone. I think that one thing that I would highly recommend and strongly support is that there are all of these provincial associations across the nation, and I don't see that much representation of Black, Indigenous people of color, women. I don't see us represented on the boards of those associations in the same way as our counterparts. So Andre, I would say that intentionality, if you happen to sit on these associations, when you hear that a chair is opening up, reach out to any of us or speak to your association or other associations that might be having a board member rotate off and say, we should be looking to replace the person leaving the board with a Black woman. And we have to be able to sit on these associations in order to kind of force our way into rooms in order to be able to advocate for ourselves. Otherwise, we are going to continue to be shut out and have to fight a lot harder, punch up above our weight, which we already do very well. But I think that we don't always have to, and we can certainly use assistance in that area in terms of advocating for women of color to be elected to boards across provincial associations for the cooperative sector. And that's my input.
Thank you so much, Shilpi, and that's brilliant. Thank you. We appreciate you. Anyone else in terms of our closing thoughts, specifically around Andre's question?
Thank you, Sope. And I want to add a little. In 2012, during the International Year of Cooperatives, the United Nations held that cooperative enterprises build a better world because more than 1 billion people belong to cooperative institutions. And I was wondering, among these 1 billion people, how many people are racialized, women, indigenous, etc. So there is a need to create more cooperative operated or owned by women, racialized women, indigenous, and people from equity deserving communities. So that's what I think we need. We need to have more of us. There are a few of us. This is not, we are like, this is not a number. We need like 100 of us or more running cooperative groups. So to have that representation, we would like to see in the community. Thank you.
Ashe. Go ahead.
Yeah. I think I will add that we need resources directed towards Black co-ops. We need it because we can do so much, we can create so much, but we need that influx of resources to help us to get where we need to. So even when you do close up, we're already where we need to be. We do need that resources. We do need that direction of resources. It's so important. Otherwise, we keep on creating small, and then other people keep on taking away from us. Okay, we create, and funny thing is that when we create with love. We create with love. We create with all our hearts in it. We create with all our passion. We so love what we do, but then we don't have the resources to really do what we need to do and to reach the people that we need to reach, right? And then it's heartbreaking, and then you're seeing all the needs that are not being met, and you know that if the resources are directed where they're supposed to be, those needs will be addressed. You know, it will be addressed. We don't need, you know, the poverty is made by people, right? It's not part of nature, because resources are in abundance for everybody. You know, resources are in abundance, you know, but then when it's been monopolized by a few, it becomes heartbreaking, becomes very, very difficult to do the work that you need to do, you know.
So one thing that I would add, Andre, thank you for that question. Number one, Freedom Dreams. Sign up to their YouTube channel and listen to all their videos. I send that to everyone I know. I'm now saying, please go Freedom Dreams YouTube, listen to all the webinars that they've had, right? Sign up with the Black Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub. They have the meetings, I believe it's every Tuesday. Let that be somewhere we come to share knowledge and come with other people. Victor will share that information. Visit the website, solidarity-economy-principles.org, so that you begin to apply those principles to your day-to-day life, right, to your organization, and then you just mainstream and streamline. And then finally, the last thing that I'm going to say that we can do immediately and get going is that after today, speak to someone else about this conference, about these organizations, and join the mailing list. I know Victor is going to, you know, send all of that. Let us begin to create the cohesion to move forward. And if you can, one thing that we're really pushing for is a rite of passage for every Black person, that when you get to 18, every Black youth in Canada goes through a training, whether it's through the Black Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, whether it's through Freedom Dream. Let's create something, whether it's through MIQ, where they go through a training. They understand they have to open up a tax-free savings account, how to do ROSCAs, how to be financially cooperative groups. When we start early, we can build the pipeline. So that's all I'm going to share for now. Thank you.
Ashe. Anyone else want to chime in before we close out?
No, I'm just going to uplift everything that the women on this panel said, because those are actionables you just heard. So yeah, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last thing I'll say is pick up this book if you don't have it. This is a very important book to pick up. This is another really important book to pick up. I'm putting on the screen so you can see. And this is a really important book to pick up as well. All right, family. So we're going to begin down. We're going to close out this session. Pretty much the same way that we opened the session, the same way we do at all things at Setsi. We want to acknowledge all the original stewards of the various lands we are on. We want to acknowledge all our ancestors, those who said freedom or death, those whose bones lie at the bottom of the transatlantic. We want to acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation or any forms of racism. We want to acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on, who carved the path, whose shoulders we stand on as we live, share, learn, and work towards our collective liberation and ultimately sovereignty. We give thanks for your time, for your leadership, for your love. One love, fam.